What is going on, boys and girls of YouTube? I'm back. Today we're doing a fairly serious video. So, yes, we've been doing the rank series. Been enjoying the hell out of playing Smite, especially for YouTube. But Smite's been having a lot of struggles, right? A lot of issues. And I think we need to talk about it, especially with tomorrow potentially being one of the biggest patches or most important patches that Hi-Rez and Smite has ever put out. Just because of the course of the game and things that are coming up. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what they need to do. I want to get your all's input. I want to see the comments. I want to know how you guys are feeling. And I just want to put everything out there, especially with the way everything's been. I think it's time we did it. We've seen Fine OK, I think, did a video like this. I know a couple of medium like Smite streamers have been talking about quitting or have quit. I'm not sure if they ever went through with it because of a lot of these reasons. So I want to talk about it. I want to break it down and I want to get into it. So before we do, make sure to like video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys watching and hanging out and being a part of all these videos. And let's just get into it. So tomorrow we have a patch notes day, right? They've changed the way patch notes are working. They are having patch notes tomorrow. They're having the PTS this weekend. So today is the 12th. Patch notes tomorrow on the 13th. And then the PTS. And then next Tuesday, the patch will land. The big patch will hit Smite. So that's a whole new thing in the first place. We're also in an area where last patch notes, they came out at the beginning of patch notes, basically said, we know everyone's unhappy with the game. We want your feedback and we're going to make changes. That was last patch notes. This would be the patch where if they're truly listening, they'll start making these changes. Last patch really wasn't bad, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't anywhere. It was like 1/50th of what we were looking for. It was just like a start, maybe like for them to test the waters. But now, this patch tomorrow has some things to hit. So I've broken down pretty much everything that needs to go on, and I want to elaborate on why I think it needs to happen, and I really do hope it does happen, but we'll see. So before we talk about that, if you guys didn't know, there was Paragon, which is a game that came out years ago. It was Smite's only real competitor, and it died. Their devs handled the game poorly, put out bad patch after bad patch, and its player base pretty much dwindled down to, concurrent players of 200 to 300, which even Rogue Company has more than that. So their game died, but they put their assets out. So they basically said, here's all the stuff we use to make the game. You all can use it. There are two games about to come out that are using those assets. There's Predecessor and there's Overprime. They're the same game with the same characters, slight tweaks in the pace of the movement pace of the games. So that's bad for Smite in general, because while I don't think those games are going to blow up and be the next League of Legends, they're going to compete with Smite. They're going to pull people away from Smite, especially people who are unhappy. So the timing, impeccable on their part, horrible for Smite and Hi-Rez's part. Just before we even get into all the actual game issues. So with the game, the things I really think they need to start fixing, the Obelisk. It was a cool idea to put onto the map, but your average player and below does not understand it. They don't get the value of it. They have no clue how it works for the most part. And on top of people not understanding it, it's way too powerful and snowbally for the people that do understand it. So it creates a very lopsided match that is heavily based around the support, which is one of the weaker roles for the most part. That person is usually the weaker player on the teams. If that's, if it ends up being that way, it's usually a lower ranked player. And most people playing the role at an average or below level are just not that good at it. So if you have someone not good at their role, adding more onto just them, pretty much primarily on that person needs, they have to be focused on stealing, pressuring out the enemy team's Obelisk. And then it becomes a problem, right? It becomes a whole thing. If you do get the Obelisk, those of you who don't know, you get gold. I believe you get XP. They've nerfed the gold, but it's still insanely valuable because one team gets it, the other team doesn't. And then on top of all that, you get to carry around this little scepter, follows you, and it just does damage. And the support that has that scepter can, at that moment, it's usually around level 8 to 10 to 11 when people get the first one, or when people are really using it and, getting pressure with it. You can solo people as a support with full defense because of this item. One team can do that, one team can't. it's a problem. And if you do it fast enough, if you get that online quick enough, you'll have it for 4 minutes. 4 minutes is kind of the max. Very unlikely that happens, but you'll have it for a very long time. That's the first issue that Hi-Rez has. They put that Obelisk in the game instead of making true map changes, and they thought it would be okay. And it wasn't enough in the first place, and it's also extremely confusing for your average or new player. That has to go tomorrow in the patch notes, or they need to do something insanely different with it, in my mind, for Hi-Rez to gain anything from it other than, a negative impact into the game. Second area. Items need to be tuned down in general, all across the board. They're pumping out way too much damage once you get items online. The time to kill, so you'll hear that in a lot of shooters, especially BRs. Time to kill is how quickly can I kill the other person, right? This person fights this person. How quickly can you kill that person? In Smite, in its origin, time to kill most of the time was not instant. There was a lot of reaction and counterplay to one person using an ability on another. And when there was insta kill, it usually meant that person had snowballed drastically off this planet, or somebody had hit a crazy combo of abilities. It wasn't the most common thing to see someone just drop. That has changed. Even if you're losing a game, if you make it to a certain point where you get full build, no matter the lead on the enemy team, you get put in a position where you can one-shot almost anyone on an enemy team. They get out of position for half a second, you can kill them. That's a problem. It makes the pace of the game slow down. It makes the early game less important, whether you kill them over and over and over and over and over for 15 minutes and then you die, you lose it all. And it makes the late game too risky, where people don't want to full commit, people struggle, little mistakes turn into game-ending mistakes. And that is not okay. That's not good for a game at a competitive or a casual level. It makes it unfun to watch at a competitive level. I personally don't even like watching the SPL right now because it's very slow paced in the early game because they have no reason to fight, because they know in the late game, it's all about who wins one fight. It's not that fun to watch. Occasionally it is, but for the most part, it's not. And then outside of that, I would like to see base damage overall reduced across mainly Guardians and Warriors. They'd have to do some other tweaking, maybe make them tankier if you're going to reduce their base damage by a lot, because their base numbers are too high. It makes pure defense and hybrid builds way too strong and way too valuable for those characters that are already very easy to play because they don't die, they do a lot of damage, and their abilities, for the most part, are fairly easy to hit. There are very few top-level Guardian Warrior gods that are difficult to play. It's not a common theme, difficult gameplay or mechanics and those gods that just doesn't play in. On top of reducing damage to them, I do think we need to see some form of reduced damage across the board between, hunters, assassins, and mages, because we just talked about the late game being too crazy. That could be their base damage. That could be their items, whatever that needs to be. On top of that, cover those things. It's a lot, I know. Pathing needs to be impacted in Smite. We've had the same map. We're on technically the halfway through a second year of the exact same map, but for the most part, the map hasn't changed since season 5. Small tweaks here and there, small movement of camps and things here and there, but for the most part, if you look at the Smite map straight across the board, you can walk from one side of the map to the other. Yes, you might have to take 2 steps to the left, but those 2 steps don't cause you to lose enough time for it to matter. They need to impact pathing. If I'm a mid laner and I want to go to the duo lane, I shouldn't be able to clear a wave, get there, kill somebody, and then get back to the mid lane before missing too many creeps. That it shouldn't be possible, and it causes a whole ripple effect across the whole game and the board. Because if pathing is that easy, first of all, you don't have to think as much about when should I leave my lane? When do I need to go over there? As a mid laner, once you start to understand that you can clear and leave and go do whatever you want, you start to become a much better player. Same with solo, clear and run to the mid lane. Same with, supports and duo, clear and run to the mid lane. Like, you can do whatever you want as soon as that wave is cleared because the pathing is so short and so quick and so easy. But it also affects that early and mid game because there's no true ganks. Yes, it happens occasionally, especially like level 1, 2, 3. But once you get into the higher level games, as soon as people are going for ganks, there's a lot of rotating. When there's rotating, those ganks aren't ganks, they're team fights. They're 3v3s, they're 4v4s, sometimes they're 5v5s at the 5-minute mark. And that is not, you're not a true jungler at that point because you have a support or a mid also playing your role, which then changes everyone else's roles across the board. And it changes how you have to position in lanes. It changes your 1v1 potential. You don't see a lot of hunters fight hunters that often because those usually turn into rotations, especially if you're a hunter that can buy time. Like a Rama can ult up in the air and a jungler can run across from his red to the lane and get there in time. Stuff like that needs to change. They need to expand the width of the map so it takes longer to get from one lane to the other, and they need to create obstacles that make it so the path is not a direct path. There needs to be something that causes me to dip into the jungle or dip into the fire giant to get across the map. And while that might clutter certain team fights and other situations that might arise, it will have a better impact to cause jungling be jungling, to cause 1v1s and 2v2s to be 1v1 and 2v2s in the dual lane, or so you might be able to play at that point. We're looking at potentially playing different gods other than warriors and guardians in that solo lane because they can fight each other and farm more and be more safe. And that just is something that the game needs again that we had back in the day. But as players have gotten better and, you know, the overall skill level of the game has pretty much increased and that base is much higher than it was, these things have become problems. Big problems in my mind. We're gonna talk about one thing that's an overall general thing. Another thing is towers. We saw the buff to towers. They do 10% more damage. It's not enough. It literally is non-existent in the game. Most of you probably didn't even know that went through. Towers need to be nuts. They need to be similar to your traditional MOBAs or just other NPC type units in other games. They need to do more damage. They need to be more threatening. You need to not be able to dive because you have 2 defense items and stand there and take 9 hits while also getting beat on by another god. That is an issue. It needs to do true damage, and it needs to not be affected by mitigation or defense or anything like that. And the actual raw damage needs to be higher. You need to be able to realistically, unless someone's stacking a lot of HP, 4 and 5 shots of tower shots should be guaranteed kills if someone else is also hitting that person, in my mind. And I hope they do that soon because the slight buff we know is not enough. But on top of that, the towers are easy to kill. The Titan's easy to kill. You get into a base and you see people ending games with one base wave of minions because the Titan is so easy to kill, which also trickles back to the amount of damage that people are able to do in those late game situations. You see a ton of just people PvE split pushing. Run into a tower, run down a lane, kill the tower, die. Do it on the other side. Go to the Phoenix, go to the Tide. They just keep doing it and it wins them games. There are a lot of people that are actually in that Masters and Grandmasters mark that have no true understanding of the game of Smite, of how to team fight, of how to position. They don't know any of that stuff. All they do is push down lanes and it works. And that is an issue. That is not a fun mechanic. It should never be a thing in a game. It should take some crazy skill or positioning or something. If someone wants to do that, it shouldn't be just run it down, run it down, run it down. Last thing in my mind, and this has been an issue horribly this year, are the servers. They need to be changed. I just bit my tongue. They need to be changed. Not fixed, not worked on, changed. High Res, unless something has changed on this part, is partnered with INAP for servers. I believe it's a Georgia-based company. But they have servers in New Jersey, in Texas. I think they have some in Chicago, and they have some in California, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it might be Southern California, but it could be wrong. They need to get away from this company because we're looking at other games that are smaller games, less successful games that have been around for a much shorter time. And they're on way more consistent servers than Smite and Hi-Rez is. I don't know what kind of money this is saving Hi-Rez. I'm sure it's ridiculous amounts, and that's why they're doing it. But at some point, the money lost from people not being able to play the game or, you know, log into the game or play the game at a competitive level because their ping is too high, it has to be impacting Hi-Rez's income, Hi-Rez's profit. The profitability has to be going down based on this. You're definitely losing players because of it. You're losing playtime because of it, which is going to cause people to not spend money on the game, which is going to cause people to not play the game. And that has to, I'm sure they have statistics, and it probably still, whatever deal they have, probably still outweighs that. But we're to a point where once these competitors come in, and once all these people are, like, so many of us are not having as much fun with the game, that they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to get away from whatever's going on with their current situation, either get their own servers implemented, work with someone who has better, more consistent servers, but it has to be fixed. It's embarrassing at this point. It's almost every day, whether it's afternoon or night, where the servers go down, whether it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. A lot of the time, Hi-Rez is coming out and saying they're being DDoS or attacked. Why isn't your server company handling that? All game companies get attacked, and they usually get attacked all the time, but it doesn't impact the performance of their servers because they have the protection and they have everything in place to compete with that. That's something that Hi-Rez needs to step up, man up, address, and do something about, because it's to the point where I almost expect the servers, like people be in my stream at night and be like, oh, our servers down? Yeah, of course they're down. Like, no duh, why would you think they're up? And that's not okay. It needs to stop. It needs to be fixed. Hi-Rez needs to stop putting it on other people. Stop saying things are happening, this and that. Do something about it and tell us what you are going to do about it, or it's going to be detrimental to the game. It's already started to be. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. Now, we've talked about a lot of the bad, and I mean, it's easy to focus on the bad. Hi-Rez is doing a lot of things that don't need to be fixed. The individual god balance, for the most part, is nuts. Yes, we've had a couple boring gods come out, like Shiva. It's a little overtuned, but overtuned is good, first of all. Overtuned causes people to play those gods more, which then allows Hi-Rez to get the information they need to tune it down. They're very consistent with this, for the most part. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than other times. But that strategy is very, very good, and I'm not going to complain about that. Maybe the time it takes them to do it sometimes I complain about. I do that on stream all the time. That just is what it is, because people like to complain. But for the most part, the god balance, the fact that at a competitive level, we're seeing 80, 90, 100 gods be played over the course of a year, that's crazy. That is not normal for any type of game, let alone a MOBA. So that's something you have to give Hi-Rez's dev team and their balance team a lot of credit for. They don't get enough credit for that. They do a very good job at that. Most item costs in general are where they need to be. It causes the game to play out the way it should. Yes, those items need to be tweaked and nerfed and buffed and stuff like that, but the item costs, which definitely impacts the overall pace of the game, is pretty solid. And on top of that, like we saw, the pace of the game is great. The length of the game, maybe not the pace, maybe not the exact speed, but the length of the game. My games are consistently like 24 to 30 minutes long, and the really close ones are longer than that. Like the really competitive ones are longer than that, which is fine. That's expected. If I have a super competitive game, I want it to go on for a while so I can have a lot of fun. So those are things Hi-Rez are doing well, and I hope they don't mess that up somehow while trying to fix these other things. If it happens, then it happens. You got to work on one thing, and you're going to have other things get impacted. It is what it is. It's hard to see the full picture every time you implement something, which is another thing we have to give them credit for. It is very difficult to see what truly needs to be changed. But from someone who's played the game for 9 years, I've seen the beginning, the middle, hopefully not the end, but this where we're currently. It's very clear that there's problems. The player base, for the first time, I think in like 4 years or 5 years, went down in February. Usually February is a crazy spike in concurrent players. Hi-Rez is not struggling. You're still looking at a player base of 40K concurrent to 50K. That means at any given moment, that many people are playing between Steam, Epic, Xbox, and PlayStation, and I guess the Switch, that's like a really good base. That's a lot of players. That is consistent. And if it's concurrent, means at any given time, that means throughout the day, a lot more people are playing the game. A million or more people are definitely playing the game a day. So I'm not too worried about that, but the fact that it's decreased consistently, it hasn't fallen to an all-time low, it's just decreased, is proof. And obviously Hi-Rez has noted it based on what they said in that last patch, the beginning of those patch notes, that something needs to be done, that people aren't happy, people aren't having as much fun. I personally have way more fun recording for YouTube than I do streaming. It is difficult to play Smite right now for 5-6 hours straight, nearly impossible. A lot of pros have tweeted out that they only enjoy playing Smite in scrims. They don't want to stream. They don't want to play the game outside of scrims. Pretty much all of them. The ranked player base is non-existent now, especially in North America, because of this. And I'm hoping that this next patch starts us on a turnaround, especially since it's middle of the year. Usually Hi-Rez does not have peak players in the middle of the year. If they can flip it now, it could set them on a course for just an overall consistent player base for the next couple of years, not just the next couple of months. that's what I'm hoping changes. I hope you guys like this video. It was a little bit longer. It's 20 minutes of me ranting. If you guys agree, disagree, tell me in the comments. I'm not going to ban you or delete your comments because you don't agree. I'm interested in how you guys feel because you play the game differently than me. This is something I've done for my livelihood for a very long time. I've done it at a competitive level for a very long time. I've breathed and lived and, spent 13 hours a day playing this game for many years. I don't do it now, but I don't want anything to happen to the game. I don't want to stop playing Smite. I don't plan on stop playing Smite, but lately it's been hard to play for extremely long, consistent periods of time, and I want to go back to wanting to play the game all the time. So hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, like button, subscribe button, all the regular stuff, and I will see you back with the normal rank. Probably we're gonna get heavy and try to hit that Masters mark here in the next probably the next week is the goal. Might not happen, but we're gonna get heavy into those videos, so be on the lookout for that, and I will see you on the video tomorrow, the next day, and the next day.